Shalom everyone and welcome to 𝐤𝐕𝅅𝐄𝑒, which is Barak in Hebrew. My name is Abigail. Today we're starting a new series entitled What is in the Name? This is a very important question and we're going to learn a lot from this series. A name is not just a distinguisher between one person and the other or one creature and the other. As we start this series, we'll be opening with a statement, in fact, a cry of a father's heart when he speaks to HUSHA, otherwise known as Hosea. He says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." And he continues to say, "Because you have rejected the knowledge, I will also reject you, that you shall be no priest to me, seeing you have forgotten the TURaH of your ALaH. I will also forget your children." This is found in the book of HUSHA, otherwise known as Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6, communicating or putting out there the cry of the father concerning his children. Now, my school teacher used to say something that always made me think. I think I was still in primary when he used to make that statement. He used to say that deaf people are also mute. And ngesiZulu, he would put it this way. He would say, abantu abangezwa emadlebeni, they cannot also speak, abakwazi ukukhuluma also. So umuntu mangabe engezwa endlebeni uba isimungulu automatically, which means deaf people are also mute. And as we're asking ourselves in the class, what does it mean? And then it's like, I know you guys are asking yourselves how come deaf people are also mute? But the reality is this, if they haven't heard anything, what can they speak? Because you can only speak what you have heard. So if they're deaf, then they can't speak because they've not heard anything. But if we take this from the scriptural basis, from what Yahweh says in his word, as recorded in the book of Romans chapter 10 verse 17, it says, "So then belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Yahweh." So you cannot believe until you hear something. Or put it differently, you will believe something that you have heard. If you have heard the word of Yahweh, you will believe Yahweh, and faith in Yahweh, belief in Yahweh, trust in Yahweh will then grow in you. But if you hear doubts, if you hear panic, if you hear fear, if you hear all these other sorts that is not coming from Yahweh, that's what you're going to be filled with. You're going to be filled with fear, with anxiety, with stress, because that's what you're hearing. So it matters what you hear. And as it matters what we hear, we're gonna now be looking at a topic about language. Because as we are seeking to know the truth, the language we use becomes paramount. We speak the language that we speak right now because we were taught that language. We didn't just know it. Either we were taught or we heard it being spoken and we got to understand the language. But when you are then seeking the truth, when you are then seeking to know the truth, the language that you're using becomes paramount. And as you continue in this teaching, you will see why is the language in which you are taught in is so important. Have you ever asked yourself why the captives had to teach the capturers their language. I think I put that incorrectly. What I want to say is, have you ever asked yourself why the capturers teach their captives their language? Why do they find it so impelling upon them, the capturers, that those that they've captured, the captives, that they have to know their language? And we see this pattern not only in what I'm going to be reading or quoting right now, but it's in many instances. But if you look at the book of Daniel, chapter 1, from verse 3 to 4, after the Yahudim were captured in Babylon, it reads, Daniel chapter 1, verse 3 to 4. The king said to Ashpenaz, the chief of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Yasharal and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, having insight in all wisdom, having knowledge and understanding in learning, capable to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the writing and speech of the Chaldeans. They had to be taught the writing and the speech of the Chaldean in Babylon. Why? Why did they see it so important, the capturers, that the captives are speaking their language? They know their language, they conduct themselves in their language. We will see that as we continue. It's the same everywhere. The African slaves who were taken to America had to speak English. Those who were taken to France speak French. Those that are taken to Portugal or Portuguese colonies, they also learn Portuguese. They were taught Portuguese. Why is it so important? And the basis of this, the reason why I'm emphasizing, is that when people say that it doesn't matter how you read the word of Yahuwah, whether you're reading it in English or in Zulu or in Afrikaans or in whichever language, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, why is it that we're seeing this consistency through and through about people to be learning a particular language? The practice was also the same even to those that were enslaved within their land through the colonial system. In South Africa, we speak English because South Africa was colonized by the British. The countries like DRC, which were colonized by French, they speak French. And the sad part with all this, which you can see that the whole slavery and that took place and how the African people were stripped of their dignity, their identity, their culture, is that if you just go on any search engine, whether it's Google or any other search engine that you prefer to use, and basically search the language used in education in each country around the world, you will see that it is only in the continent of Africa that the people are taught in other languages other than the one of their mother tongue. They are taught in either English or French or whatever other language that are not their mother tongue. This is only happening in the continent of Africa. You can check, as I said, whichever search engine that you want to use. It will actually show, even in images, that in the whole world, in all the continents, only African continent is where the people are taught in a language, or rather language used in education within the African continent is any other language. Is actually a foreign language to them. It's not their mother tongue. Why? It all comes back to, please don't use the statement, it doesn't matter. Every time you are tempted to use the statement, it doesn't matter, remember the cry of Yahuwah through HUSHA, his servant, otherwise known Hosea, is written in chapter 4 verse 6, where it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Now as we continue, then people say it doesn't matter what language are we to speak. We're speaking different languages anyway. But when you say that, again, Yahuwah is giving us something to look forward to. And not only to look forward to start changing right now. He spoke through his servant, 𤤕𤅅𤐓𝐄, otherwise known as Jeremiah, as found in Jeremiah or Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 16. Yahuwah instructed his people to seek the ancient paths. What does it mean to seek the ancient paths? To seek the good way in which we are supposed to go in which we're supposed to go in, ancient path, the old path, the paths of our fathers. And in doing that, as we are seeking then the ancient paths, the paths of our forefathers, then the question then arises. We are told that the whole world was speaking one language before the Tower of Babel. Then the question is, what is that one language that was spoken before the Tower of Babel? That's the language when Yahuwah tells us to seek the ancient paths. He will never ask us to seek something that is unattainable. Whenever he says seek something, it means you can find it. It's within your reach. So when he says that we must seek the ancient path and walk in it, not just to seek it and know it, but once you find it, walk in it. So it reads, as I said, Jeremiah or Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 16, stand in the ways and see and ask for the old or ancient paths where the good way is. You have to ask, where is the good way? You have to seek and search where the good way is. And as I said again, if he says to you seek for something, he can never ask you to seek something that is unattainable. But once you have found it, it is futile for you to find it and then reject it and still go in your own way. The scripture tells us in the book of Jacob, which is now called James, but it is Jacob, that anyone who hears the word of Yahuwah but does not do it is the same as someone who looks at himself in the mirror afterward he has forgotten how he looks like. What's the point of finding the truth? What's the point of finding the ancient paths but not walking in it? You are deceiving yourself, like someone who looks at the mirror, immediately after looking at the mirror, he has forgotten how he looks like. Now the word tells us that Yahuwah says, stand in the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths or old paths where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for your soul. But they say we do not walk in it. So the truth is now out there. The truth is being spoken, but people are still rejecting it. People are still saying we do not walk in it. That then is to your peril. Then the question is, what was this language that was spoken before the Tower of Babel? And as I said before, that when Yahweh says seek something, He knows that you can find it, and we can find, we can know what was the language that was spoken before the Tower of Babel. What was this language of creation? And this you can find in the book of 𝐤�𤅅𤐓𝐄, otherwise known as Jubilees. 𝐤�𤅅𐐓 or Jubilees, chapter 12, verse 25 to 27. Now, this is in this chapter, this is where you find an encounter with a malak, otherwise known as an angel, who was actually not met, was sent by Yahweh to Abraham. That was before his name was changed to Abraham. So at that time he was Abram, to teach him about the ways of Yahweh and the word of Yahweh. So then it reads, so Yahweh then instructed this malak, otherwise known as an angel, and he said, open his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak with his mouth with the language which has been revealed. For it had ceased from the mouths of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow of Babel. This is the point to highlight. After opening his eyes, after opening his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak. Remember what I started by saying, that deaf people are mute people. If you don't hear anything, you cannot speak. So Yahweh had to instruct this malak or this angel to first open his ears so that he can be able to speak with his mouth what he heard, with the language which has been revealed. So this language, which was lost through rebellion in the process of the Tower of Babel, has now been revealed. This language, which was the language of creation that we lost, has now been revealed, but people are still saying no. They don't want, they've found the old paths, the truth is now out there, but they are rejecting it. They are refusing to walk in it. They are saying, as it says in the book of Jeremiah or Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 16, we do not walk in it. We now know it, but we are not going to walk in it. We choose to hold on to what we know. We're not going to the past. I found it very also interesting. It's found somewhere in the book of Luke, where it talks about that you cannot put, you must not put an old cloth into a new cloth, otherwise it will tear and the whole cloth will be torn. It also talks about that you must not put a new wine in an old wine skin, because otherwise the whole wineskin will burst. And then they're saying that, the scripture in Luke, I can't remember the exact chapter, but then it continues to say, the people are saying that why should they turn into the new wine, because the old wine is good, they are used to it. So people have this tendency of wanting to hold on to the past, to hold on to what they've been taught, regardless whether it was true or not. Hold on to what they know. They don't want to learn the new things. And but yet when they hear scriptures where Yahweh says that, behold, I am doing a new thing, and look, it is springing forth, they get excited and shouting praises. But when they're supposed to then practice the new that they've learned, they say, no, the old one was good, we're not letting go of it. So this is the challenge that people are having, and that is to your peril if you do not want to learn what Yahweh is revealing. The scripture exactly talk about that this language which has now been revealed. For it had ceased from the mouths of all children of men from the day of the overthrow of Babel. Then the Malach continues to say, and I opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation. So we find this now in the book of 𝐤𝐕𝐅𝐤𝐄 or Jubilees, chapter 12, verse 25 to 27, that the language of creation, the language that people were speaking before the Tower of Babel was Hebrew. Now, Yahweh had to take it upon himself to get this Malach to teach Abram this language, because he had lost this language as everybody lost it through the Tower of Babel. If it was not important, why would Yahuwah send a Malach to teach Abram Hebrew? He could have taught him his word in the language of the Chaldeans, as he was in the land of Ur at the time. In Babylon, the Babylonian language, he could have spoken his word, but he didn't. Why? Because there is power in the language, and in the language in which you are taught. And Yahuwah had to reveal and teach Abram the language before the fall, before the rebellion that took place in Babel, as they were building the Tower of Babel. And he took the Sepharim, otherwise known as books, of his fathers. These were written also in Hebrew, and he transcribed them and began from henceforth to study them. And I made known to him that which he could not understand, and he studied them during the 6 rainy months. It took 6 months for Abram to know Hebrew. It took 6 months for Abram to know the scriptures, which were written in the Sepharim, or the books of his forefathers, Hanok or Enoch and Noah and Shem and all those that lived before him, which were written instructions, commandments of Yahuwah. So it is ignorance to say, oh no, language doesn't matter, you can just learn in language. We are commanded, we are instructed to go back to the ancient path and seek the ancient paths. Once we find the ancient paths, the good way in which to walk in, then we must walk in it. We must not be rebellious, as the people quoted in Jeremiah or Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 16, who said, we do not walk in it, even when they know the truth. Because when Yahuwah reveals the truth, it is upon you to choose whether you're going to walk on the revelation that has been put out there or not. And hence, even the language of creation was then revealed not only to Abram, but it has now been revealed to us right now, that Hebrew is the language of creation, when all people before, spoken by all people before they fell into rebellion and then punished by losing their tongue, their language. Now, as we continue this series, which is entitled, What is in the Name? We're going to be also looking at just briefly regarding the name itself. As we spoke earlier on, that the capturers ensured that their captives are taught in their language. The capturers also changed the names of their captives. Now, have you ever asked yourself, why is it that they found it very compelling that they had to change their names? If we read also in Daniel chapter 1, we read in Daniel chapter 1 from verse 3 to verse 5, where they were taught the language of the Chaldeans. Now, the same chapter of Daniel, chapter 1, from verse 6 to 7, now we see their names being changed. Let's read. Now among them were from the sons of Yehuda, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And the chiefs of the eunuchs gave them names, for he called Daniel Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. Now, why did they have to change their names? The sad part about this is that in our times right now, 2025, we have a lot of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednegos, which they don't even know that those were the Babylonian names that were given to these three Hebrew boys, the three boys from Yehuda, whose names were changed. Why were they changed? Now, if we just look at the name Daniel, the name Daniel has Al at the end, and they changed his name to Belshazzar, and the name Belshazzar has its starting prefix there of Bel. Remember when Elijah was praying, and then he said that enough with this whole thing. If Yahuwah be your Allah, worship him. If it's not, then serve Baal. If Baal be your Al, then serve him. At that time, this is where it was on Mount, what was that mountain called now? I've just forgotten the name of the mountain, where he actually called the fire from the Shamayim, called the fire from the heavens, from Yahuwah, to kill all the prophets of Baal. This is the same Baal, their idol, that they're worshipping, that they now changed the name of Daniel to Belteshazzar. This is the prefix Bel, which is Bel, their idol. Hananiah had a Yah at the end of the name. Hananiah, they changed it to Shadrach. Same with Mishael. Mishael had an Al at the end of his name. Mishael, they call it Meshach. Why? They're not all, because their names had the association, had the link with their creator, whose name is Yah in short form. In full, it is Yahuwah, who is the only Al, the only Allah who exists. They changed their names. Azariah also, you can see Yah at the end of Azariah. And Isaiah's name was changed to Abednego. So Abed is a servant. The name Abed in Hebrew means servant. It's actually Abad, but in this it's written as Abed. It's Abad. Nego was one of the idols of the time, or one of their gods. His name was Nego. So they changed they changed Isaiah's name, which had a Yah in it. They called him a servant of an idol, being the child of the Most High Yah. So now you understand why I always emphasize the issue of the language, that it is not just a matter of distinguishing between one boy or the other. There actually was an intention to destroy, remove, delete altogether their memory of their creator, their Yahuwah, the Allah of the creator of the heavens and the earth, Yahuwah. They had to literally remove it and all the link that they have as the children of Yasharal. And they had to replace it with their gods, their idols. And hence, in our times, as I say in 2025, so many people that I know that are called Shadrach, they don't even know how the name came about. And even when we read the scriptures, because in the scriptures they have the scriptures that we have, they still have these old names of that were changed, being Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And people innocently read the Bible and they say, I'm going to name my child Shadrach, I'm going to name my child Abednego. Not even know what Abed means, because that is an Hebrew meaning that means servant. Nego is an idol, their God. So you call your child a servant of a particular God that you don't even know, yet you say you worship Yahweh. This is the power of the language and the power of the name. It really makes me cringe when someone says it doesn't matter. That is ignorance to the core. The practice was the same also with the enslaved in the land, also through colonial system, where people were given English names. South Africans were given English names, people in DRC were given in French names, and so forth and so forth. Now, ignorance is not bliss. People must stop it. Seriously, ignorance isn't bliss. Yahweh changed Abram's name. He changed Abram's name. He changed Sarah's name. He changed Jacob's name, Jacob's name, etc. And in fact, even Jacob himself, otherwise known as Jacob, he also changed Benjamin's name. It's ignorance to say language and names don't matter. If they didn't matter, why would Yahweh change his people's names? In fact, also, why is Yahweh's adversaries, Satan, changes the people's name, as we have seen what they were doing in Babylon, and we see what we're doing through the colonial system. Not only through the colonial system, even the slaves that were taken here in Africa to the Americas, they changed their names. They destroyed their names. They did not even know what their names were. They only knew the names that were given by their capturers. Why would they go to that extent if it didn't matter? Yahweh instructed Adam to name the animals, and he said, whatever you call them, that shall its name be. So whatever you call something, that it becomes. And we're going to be looking the next part and seeing that actually names are not inconsequential. They're not just there to distinguish one creature from another creature, or one person from another creature. In fact, in the Hebrew context, a name is not inconsequential. Names are not just there, as I said, to just distinguish one person from another. Number one, when a person is named, the name tells of what was happening at the time when they were born. So the name gives us context, because the people were named based on the context that was happening around the time when they were born. And we see this when Rachel was giving birth to his second son. And this is happening in the Hebrew culture. The Hebrew culture, remember that the Hebrew language was the language of creation before the Tower of Babel. And we see Hebrews continuing consistently with also understanding the power and the meaning of the name, that there was not just like go through a list of names and like which one sounds nice, which one is beautiful, and let's just pick a name. No. It was like what was happening around the time. When Rachel was giving birth to her second son, she experienced great difficulty. As a result of the pain and the distress and the sorrow that she was going through, she named the child Ben-Oni, which means son of my distress or son of my sorrow. So the name specifically tells what was happening around the time when the child was born. because that was when she was giving birth. That's the pain that she went through, and this is found in the book of Bereshit, known as Genesis chapter 35 verse 18. Interestingly, there is a town in the east of Johannesburg here in South Africa that is called Benoni. I wonder if they know, whoever named that town Benoni, that it's actually Ben-Oni. Two words, Ben-Oni, which means son. Ben, in fact it's Ban, called in these writings Ben-Oni, meaning son of my distress. I want to come to my own personal example. When my father received the news that I was born, he was so happy because I was his first child. And he named me Ndomkona. And the reason why he named me Ndomkona is that he said, in excitement, in joy that he said, Intombi isikhona, which means the girl has arrived. Then he named me Ndomkona. So you can already see, at that particular time, I didn't know that I was Hebrew, and my parents did not know also that they were Hebrews, because this information was revealed later to me. It is revealed to many others, but unfortunately other people are rejecting it, and I'm one of those that have accepted that which has been revealed, the ancient path, the good way, which I am walking in it, and I am encouraging everyone, imploring everyone else to also walk in this way, even as Yahuwah commands us to do so. So he said, Intombi isikhona, and that's how I was named Ndomkona. And my mother named me Abigail. And I always used to say this term that, as she didn't know that she was Hebrew, that we were Hebrews, she just loved the name Abigail because she knew the singer Abigail 𝐤𝐕𝅅𤐓𝐄, and that's why she named me Abigail. But later, as the truth was revealed concerning the ancient parts and who we are, then I understood that Abigail is not an English name. It is actually a Hebrew name, which means father's joy, because Abba or Abi or Abba, it means father, and then Gail means joy, so it is father's joy. Otherwise, other people say it's father's delight. So my name is not an English name, but a Hebrew name. And you can now, I could now pick up the link to say, in as much as my father, who was Zulu, uGasa, uFani Gasa, when he said Kuti Intombi isikhona, I was his joy, I was he was happy that I was born. I was his joy and pride. And now I'm now able to see the link, not only from the Zulu name Ndomkona, but also from my Hebrew name, which is Abigail, father's joy. And then I got to even understand it beyond the earthly realm, that in the spiritual realm, I am my heavenly Father's joy. When he looks at me, he says, I am pleased because of her actions, because he's doing my word, because he's representing me well, because he's obeying me, because she's trusting me, she's obeying me, she's walking in the path that I commanded everyone to walk in that path. So I bring joy to him. And that word and that name, as I said also, it's not only when people are named, it's not only talk about the current situation, but even in the future, it guides you. Whatever I do, I ask myself, if I treat someone this way, is that going to bring joy to my Father? No, then I won't do it. If I speak in a particular way to someone, is that going to bring joy to my Father? If the answer is no, I live according to my name. My name becomes it shapes my path, it shapes my destiny, it shapes my conduct. That's why the series that we're looking at today, it is, what is in the name? The other reason when Hebrew people were naming their children, it was not only from the context that was taking place around the time, but they were also naming their children based on the future that that particular child will the destiny, the purpose that a particular child will attain to in the future. So the names were not only historic, but they're also prophetic. They are foretelling of what will become of a particular child. And we see this not only child, by the way, because we see Yahuwah changing people's name who were adults. An example here is Abram. When Yahuwah changed Abram's name, the name Abram means exalted father. Exalted father, that's what Abraham. So Ab is father. Then Ram refers to exaltation. And Yahuwah changed his name to be Abraham, from Abram, from exalted father, which now Abraham means father of multitudes. So Yahuwah, by virtue of changing the name, this new name was now prophetic. He didn't have a child at that particular time when he was called exalted father. And now, not only having a child, and now Yahuwah is even speaking more prophetic towards him and foretelling what will become of him. He says, you're gonna be a father of multitude, not just a father of 1 or 2 children, no, a father of multitude. This is found in the book of Bereshit, otherwise known as Genesis chapter 17 verse 5. So this way we see an example of the name foretelling of what will come in the future, being prophetic. He also changed Jacob's name, otherwise known as Jacob. And the name Jacob or Jacob, it means heel catcher, to follow, to circumvent, supplanter, or deceiver. And he changed his name to be Yasharal, which means to contend or to strive with all and men and overcome. And we find this in the book of Bereshit again, otherwise known as Genesis chapter 32 from verse 24 to 29. And it reads, so before we read there, I want us to just refer historically. This is the time where Jacob meets this man and he wrestled with this man and till daybreak, and the man says, leave me, and he says, no, I will not leave me until you barak me or bless me. So we see not only from the futuristic point of view what the name Yasharal means in terms of contending with all and with men. We even see it historically where Yasharal contended with Laban. He was his name was Jacob at the time, was Jacob at the time before his name was changed. But he contended with Laban and he overcame. He also contended with or strove with Esau, his twin brother, and he overcame. So that was not only limited to the historic context, but we also see it being prophetic that he would in the future still contend with the Edomites, being the nation that came from Esau. Yasharal is in striving with the Edomites. And Yahuwah tells us that it will not end the way Edomites are oppressing Yasharal, but it will end with Yasharal overcoming and conquering the Edomites and ruling over the Edomites. Yes, they are ruling right now. Yes, they are oppressing Yasharal right now, but it will come to an end. The story will not end this way because it's been prophesied and it will happen that Yasharal will overcome, will contend and overcome, will strive and overcome the Edomites. Not only the Edomites, but other nations as well. So his name depicts the spirit of someone who does not quit. Yasharal name depicts the spirit of someone who does not give up, someone who persists until they get what is rightfully theirs. And hence, he said when he was wrestling with that man, I will not let you go until you barak me, until you bless me. This is the spirit that we are to have as the children of 𝐤𝐕𝅅𝐤𝐄, as 𝐤𝐕𝅅𝐤𝐿, of not quitting, of not giving up, and standing firm for what we believe in, and standing and say we will fight until we get that which is rightfully ours. We will wrestle until we get that which is rightfully ours. Yes, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities in the heavenly places. And how do we wrestle? How do we fight? We hold our position, having the armor of Yahuwah upon us, having the word of Yahuwah as the spear that we use to throw all the fiery darts against the enemy. And using the field of faith, the field of belief when the enemy is attacking us, having the helmet of deliverance, having the shoes ready to proclaim the message of the kingdom. If we read also in the book of Luke chapter 18 from verse 1 to 5, we find an example of a woman who would not quit, who would not give up until she sees justice, until she sees that which is rightfully hers being done. This is about a widow who wanted a certain judge to do right to her adversary. The judge resolved after her much persistence by saying, even if I don't fear Allah nor regard men, yet because this widow troubles me, I shall do right to her. She wouldn't let go until she find that what is right, that it be done for her, until justice was done. This is the kind of the person that we are. This is where the name, what it means, that we must live after our names, because that's who we are as 𝐤𝐕𝅅𝐤𝐿. And now the other point also that is important as we talk about the names is that names are not translated. The names are not translated. A meaning of the name can be provided. Yes, one can provide the meaning of the name, but must never translate. Why is it that names must not be translated? I've just spoken earlier on that people are named based on the context that was happening at the time. So how are you going to translate the context, because you were not there? You don't understand the context that was happening at the time. You don't even understand the culture that was taking place at the time. So translation it's not just a matter of one word in English and then you bring it in, one word in Zulu and you bring it in English, or one word in Hebrew and you bring it in English. It doesn't. Otherwise, you're going to lose the essence of what that name means if you try to translate it. Translation literally just replaces one word from one language to the other. An example is if someone is named Nhlanhla, Zulus would name Nhlanhla is a Zulu name. If Nhlanhla, my son used to go to school with Nhlanhla. Actually, interestingly, though, he used to be a friend with Nhlanhla in crèche or kindergarten, and then even when he was in high school, he was also a friend, primary school, with another boy whose name was Nhlanhla. When Nhlanhla goes to England or whatever, his name does not become Lucky. No, he still is Nhlanhla. So the name is not just, names are not translated. It's the same thing with, assume that there's someone in England who's called Gift. If their parent called that person Gift, when it comes to South Africa, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, we're not going to call that person Sbusiso. We're not going to call that person Sipho, because Gift in Zulu is Sipho. We don't translate names. The person will still be Gift. In fact, in my family, my cousin is Gift, and we still call him Gift. All of us being Zulus, we don't call him Sipho. My aunt, last born from my mother's, from my grandmother, her name is Busisiwe, and we don't call her Blessing, because her name is Busisiwe. In fact, I had an uncle, and my uncle's name was Blessing, and Blessing, we didn't call him Sbusiso. You don't do that. And I don't understand why people constantly say, oh no, this name has now been translated. Names are not translated. Not translated. Should not be translated. When James comes from England, we know King James, or there was a King James, and if we even see in the Bible the version of King James that was approved by King James. When he were to come to South Africa, we wouldn't call him Jacobe. Why would you call him Jacob? Because his name is James. But how come in the scriptures, the book of Jacob, otherwise known as Jacob, has now been changed to James? Why? Why are the names being changed? Names must never be changed because they have a history, they have a future, they have a meaning attached to it. We will now also be looking, as we're about to close in today's teaching, the names of Yasharal, who will also change, and you can be able to see how the translation of those names totally lost essence of it. Yasharal had 12 sons, as found in the book of Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 29 from verse 32 to 35. Also chapter 30 verse 6 to 24, as well as chapter 35 verse 17 to 18. Their names, they were named based on the same principle, same Hebrew principle, that people are named based on either the historic context that was happening, whether they were born, and or can be both prophetic. So we saw in the example of Benjamin that his name was, he was named Ben-Oni based on the historic context that was happening at the time. But his father then changed his name to be the son of my strength, Benjamin, or Benjamin, being future prophecy of what he would be. We saw also with Yasharal that his name was both historic and prophetic, that he had contended and strove with Al as well as men, using Esau as an example, using Laban as an example. But it was not only limited to the historic context, but also prophetically in the future, he would be this person that will not give up until they get that which is rightfully theirs. So the sons, the 12 sons of Yasharal, the first one is Reuben, which means, for Yahuwah has looked on my affliction, because now, in fact, this is how they were named. Remember, from the historic perspective. So when Leah gave birth to the first son of Yasharal, he named him Reuben, for she said, for Yahuwah has looked on my affliction, because now my husband is going to love me. That's the context in how Reuben was named. This is the meaning of his name. Now, when he is now called Reuben, what does Reuben mean? It doesn't mean anything, because there's no meaning in English. The meaning was in Hebrew, from the Hebrew context that was happening at the time. The second child is Shamaun. Also the second child of Leah. This is what she said after giving birth to Shamaun. She said, because Yahuwah has heard that I am unloved, he gave me this son too. The word Shama means hear. Now, the word Shama, which means hear, we see it on his name, Shamaun, because Yahuwah has heard that I am unloved. He gave me the son too. Yahuwah heard. And the word Shama means hear. So when that name is now changed to Simeon, where is Shama in Simeon? Where is hear in Simeon? You don't find that. It loses meaning altogether. In fact, the one thing that I wanted to mention is on Ra'uban. Ra refers to look upon something. And that's why she then said, Yahuwah has looked upon my affliction. So you can see the link of the Hebrew words in the names of these people. The third son was 𝐤𝐕𝐅𝐓𝐄, otherwise known as Louis or Levi. It's now called Levi. But in the word 𝐤𝐕 is the word U, and U speaks to attaching something in Hebrew, speaks to joining something. And this is why she said, now this time my husband is joined to me because I have borne him 3 sons. This is how we see the names having meanings. And then the 4th son was Yehuda, or is Yehuda. And the Hebrew name, the Hebrew word to praise is Yada. Yada Yahuwah. Yada Yah. And now we see, and this is also what Leah said, she said, now I praise Yahuwah. That's how she named him Yehuda, because praise is Yada in Hebrew. So when you then say Judah, you lose that meaning. Hence, I'm constantly emphasizing that names are not translated. The 5th son was Dan. And it means ALaH has rightly ruled my case and has also heard my voice and given me a son. The 6th son was Naphtali, and it means, with great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and I have overcome. All this you can see on the scriptures that I mentioned earlier on. The 7th son is Gad or Gad, which means fortune comes. The 8th son is Asher, which means, this way she said, I am blessed, for the daughter shall call me blessed. The 9th son is Yashaka, otherwise known as Issachar. And she said, ALaH has given me my hire because I have given my female servant to my husband. So it's not just coincidentally just naming. There is a context in which what was happening at the particular time, which cannot be translated, which has a meaning. And that's why it's important to hold on to our language of creation. The 10th son was Zabulon or Zebulon. ALaH has presented me with a good present. Now my husband is going to dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. That's what Leah said. The 11th child is Yusuf, and that's who is called now Joseph. And remember what I said, that U speaks of attaching, speaks of joining, speaks of also of adding. When you say end, you say ALaH has taken my approach. Yahuwah has added to me another son. And then the last son is Benjamin or Benjamin. I spoke about him earlier on, as found in the book of Bereshit, chapter 35, from verse 17 to 18. And it came to be, as she was having great difficulty giving birth, that the midwife said to her, do not fear, for it is another son for you. And it came to be, as her life was going out, for she died, that she called him Ben-Ani, which is written as Ben-Oni, which means son of my grief. But his father called him Ben-Yaman, which is son of my strength. We're gonna stop here in terms of the what is in the name with this understanding, and then in the next teaching we'll continue from there. And for now, shalom.